So, when we think about go-to-market strategies and just a little bit of the agenda, we think about defining the target account motion, picking the signals, and then how to build that repeatable deal model. And again, I do have a few workshop outputs here. So first, let's talk about why a lot of these like AI-enabled go-to-market strategies are failing. And the suspects are probably the same as you have already guessed, right? There is no real time alignment or definition and segmentation. A lot of time steering is maybe it is there and there is some scoring, but it's not truly actionable. There is no signals or very low high personalization, and then no real owner of how these accounts are actually moving through your HubSpot instance or your entire motion, and which is what we call this inbound and outbound activities through Clay and HubSpot. We think about them through the lens of 5 different layers, really. It's 4 layers with a feedback loop. And today we are talking about the first 3. So the layers are sourcing, right? How are you actually getting new companies and contacts into your system? The second one is enrichment. How are you enriching them? Like, what's important to enrich? And then how are you thinking about the context that you are sourcing? And the third one is the contextual layer that allows us to understand how all of that data really needs to be consumed from a rep's point of view or by the AI that's actually sending the emails for hyper personalization. And then layer 4 is going to go into the actions. We are going to talk a little bit about how we recommend the different actions for the different tiers, but we're not going to go deep into how it's actually done because we won't have time. And then the final piece of this is the feedback loops. And so while AI can be fed a lot of information to learn from your inputs, it's not going to learn on its own from a lot of different channels. You almost have to go in and like retrain the AI or the pieces that are bringing up your contextual layer in a consistent manner and specifically suggested to be with your reps inputs. So, how do you actually find your target account motion? So first, you build your TAM, right? You're thinking about your firmographics. So these are all of the boilerplate information, the different industries and sub-segments that you want. And then you're pulling that information directly from Play with the sense of having this different ICP in tags or in segments. And usually the way that we have found it works best is by doing it by industry or by company size. And I just want to emphasize this. This sounds very base level, but the idea of having your TAM truly segmented is going to allow you to send that hyper personalized email. So I'm not just talking about, oh, yes, this is my ICP or this is not. I'm talking about ICP industry company size, because the way that you target an SMB or you talk to an SMB or the pain points of an SMB are very different from how you do that to an enterprise level, right? And so that leads me to the next point, which is mapping the buyer personas. And this is not just you need to figure out who your buyer personas are. This is at an SMB level in a, let's call it media SMB company, who are the right people that I need to. So in an SMB media company, I might want to talk to the VP of production because that's the most likely title. While at an enterprise level company, I might be okay with a manager level because they are also budget holder and the VP is not likely to reach back out to me. So that type of mapping at the ICP plus buyer persona level is going to be very important for how we actually send out the messaging. And then the final piece of this is just SLAs and ownership, right? Like who's owning the TAM list maintenance, ICP tagging, making sure that if you are enriching companies that don't fall under your ICP, you actually also have a tag to say, this is not ICP, and I know that it has already. So essentially, at the end of this first layer, your entire database should be fully, all our account should be, we should have the label if it's ICP as the label with the buyer persona label. So that way, when we're going into the specifics of the categorization and the buyer messaging building, we're able to pull from that to be able to segment people out into the different messages. So how do we go about doing that? Well, the first thing we do is we usually go and talk to the actual people who are doing this manually. The rep or the SDR interviews makes them reach out. What's the gut feeling signals that they look at when they're trying to reach out to someone or prospecting to someone? And who are the fastest deals? The way that we go about this is actually doing some real life research with closed one engagements. All of your closed one accounts for the last year or 6 months, enrich them and categorize them and find the patterns. I identify some of the triggers and map out what your buying committee looks like at all of the different levels. That's the best way for you to understand who you should actually go after. And then the final one, and the AI twist to all of this is use a prompt to validate a lot of this information or to get some of the initial information that you need. And I do have a prompt that I use that I can share with you guys. But the idea is that the deliverable of this is you have your different segments with the different criteria that is matched to each one of the different segments, tagged with specific pain points, tagged with specific fit criteria, and then the same thing at the contact level. And when you're doing this and you're matching it to the ICPs, you understand that for ICP segment one, these are the actual people that you care about and that you're going to be sourcing from a Clay perspective. So I know that, again, an S&P company needs the CEO plus one other person because the CEO is the decision maker and the other person is the champion, versus segment two or three being very different. And this also allows us to get the buying roles of the buying committee for each one of the segments differently. And that's actually eventually going to feed into how we're going to do the scoring. So this is a template for you guys. Now let's go into step two. Step two is going to speak into all of the different signals. And I think when it comes to Clay, we talk a lot about like this white canvas effect. Like, how do I even start? Actually makes sense to me. How do I capture the low hanging fruit so that I can actually go out and do something with this data and get the results from a pipeline generation perspective? So we think about signals from 3 points of view. The first one is all of your like first party signals. And I don't necessarily mean first party is like your information that you have in your database. It's more like what does your inbound strategy uh, what does it do to actually create brand gravity that we can scrape from? So anybody that's going into the website that doesn't fill out a form, need LinkedIn followers that are interacting with your brand, even on social media that is posting about keywords that you care about, or anybody Googling a keyword that you care about. So all of those things are very much what we consider first party signals, and paid media engagement is one of them. The strategy and that, and you create the first campaign being an awareness campaign to cast a wide net. Anybody having impressions, or if it's a social one, LinkedIn and comments, you're able to scrape from those people and bring them back into the fold to be able to reach out. The third party signals are more like what you would consider your custom signals that are very much, bespoke to your business. And it can be some of the more known ones like funding news or hiring posts or new hires for relevant roles, but it can be pretty much anything. I mean, we do things around if you have a provider for something specific and you are posting a negative review for that particular company, we're able to use that as a signal. If you're a security company and one of your triggers is news around break-ins, we're able to use that as a signal. And so these always on signals allow us to automatically in real time source information about the companies and the contacts that display these behaviors or the signals that we're interested in to be able to capture them for cold outreach campaigns. And then lastly, we do ongoing monitoring. So this beautiful, so clear database that we are building out that is fully enriched and has ICP, how do we make sure that we are continuously keeping up changes within the business matter to us? And so the entire ongoing monitoring of things like mergers and acquisitions or market expansion signals or job changes, or really whatever makes the best sense to your business. Again, this is still a lot when it comes to signals. So how do we make sense of the things that will actually move your needle? A little bit of how we do our own research to be able to find what those signals are and classify them and score them. The way that we think about this is literal questions to your reps, or if you have this information, why does a company reach out to you? Like from an inbound perspective of companies we have actually what is the thing that they tell you that they are undergoing in order to actually facilitate the process and make it meaningful for them to acquire your service or solution. And so, just as an example, Rep Partners is a professional services company. And a lot of the things that we started hearing, and obviously HubSpot and Clay, and so a lot of the things that we started hearing through sales motion, through the sales cycle, was things like, we were actually just acquired and we have like company organizational shifts, or we're thinking about HubSpot as a tool, so we need to implement it, or we're thinking about Clay as a tool and we're hoping to implement it. And so those are reasons why people are reaching out to us, and they were really clearly mapped to things like mergers and acquisitions or purchasing of new tools and things that we were able to translate into signals. That research of the triggers is very important to do, just from a really human language level. What are the things that are causing different companies or contexts to reach out to us? And then going back and thinking about how that is going to, or how can that be sort of like translated into a technical signal. When you start identifying these signals, you can then very easily start thinking about, okay, that's actually a first party signal versus a third party signal versus something that I can just monitor on an ongoing basis. And then the way that we think about scoring those signals is based on the signal source, the quality of the signal, and then a recency component. So I am going to assume that everybody here is using HubSpot at some capacity. And when we talk about HubSpot scoring, the only way to be able to input decay into scoring mechanisms is through the engagement properties. And engagement is basically anything that you're able to see directly from within your marketing interactions with your database. So if they are already in your database and they went into your website, if they're already in your database and they opened an email, or et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to these third-party signals that and first-party signals that we're sourcing, that happens before the lead or the contact is within your database. And even if it wasn't, it's not one of the properties that the system allows us to create decay in. So the way that we've gone about that is by creating a recency bonus. So basically, every signal that we source into HubSpot has a date. And if that date is less than 15 days ago, we give it a certain score. If it's more, that is between 15 and 30, another lower score, et cetera, et cetera. So that it actually helps us move the companies between the different tiers in a relevant way, in a timely way, so that we understand who is actually demonstrating the intent that we need for action. So that leads me to how the scoring model and the fit model actually work. So the idea here is that we're taking into account contact fit. So who is the person? Are they in the right location? Do they have the right buyer persona? Are they a decision maker or a champion? And that feeds into a maximum score of 100 points. Then we create a separate bucket for intent. The intent score is the one that as the first party, third party, and recency bonus. That's a max of 100 points. And then we create a company intent score, which also has a max of 100 points. It takes into account all of the company fit, company signals, and it also aggregates contacts. So these contact scores, basically we created a ladder to where if the contact score is between 75 to 100, gives more points than if between 50 and 75. And so that also, as the contacts have different display of interactions with the brand and more contacts have interaction with the brand or with the signals, the account can be also moving through the different tiers. Because the final output of this is having tiers at the company level, where tier one accounts are sent directly to the SDR team for full outreach. This is human in the loop. This is them sending out personalized campaigns, calls, LinkedIn interactions. Some of those things can be automated, but the idea here is that someone's eyes are on that company. And if they need to source additional contacts, they do. If they need to multi-thread, they do. The second one is tier two, where we are fully sending automated campaigns. Everything is fully automated, but still being sent from a person's perspective. So this is a one-to-one outbound campaign that is sent based on high personalization specific to the signal that we care about. And then the final one here is going to be tier 3, where we're doing all of the marketing retargeting. This is Clay retargeting campaigns, which we've started doing since the ads release. This is newsletters, this is marketing nurture campaigns, etc., so that they can start getting nurtured and eventually fit into the other tiers. And this is an example of what the actual template looks like. So this is all of your contact scoring, how it fits into the company scores, the company signals, recency bonus, and then the aggregation at the contact level, and then how you should think about all of the tiers. I won't spend too much time here because we were already warned it's coming to a close. But really, the final part of all of this is building that repeatable deal path, right? And so all of the tier 1 accounts have a specific motion that they're going through being assigned. There's expectations from us from an SDR perspective of when and how they should be sending all of these different campaigns, and how they can multi-thread if there's no replies, etc. And then tier 2, their own sequence, and tier its own sequence. And the way that we think about the ownership of this is by looking into each one of the actions and touch points there and giving them an SLA and an owner so that we understand what the expectations on everyone's front is, because automations fail, tier 2 accounts might be paused, and so somebody needs to be owning that. The person to be following a process. So there's a lot of ownership that happens around this. And so as I bring this to a close, here's a little bit of like a 90-day all-bound sprint for you guys so that you can take back and just sort of work on this on your own. And what we think about this, as we think about it, this 90-day sprint, like what are the different things that we recommend doing in each one of those different weeks, and how you can help build this entire motion within those 90 days.